Hey, welcome back to the channel. In this video I'll be discussing Warren Buffett's comments regarding America at the 2020 annual Berkshire Hathaway meeting. He made plenty of invaluable statements on America and why he continues to believe in American business and companies, and why he suggests that everyone should invest in an index fund that tracks American performance. So welcome back. Hopefully you guys do enjoy today's video. Make sure to drop a like on today's video if you do enjoy. Let's aim for 15 likes on today's video. Let's get straight into it. So we're going to go straight to the clips, and then I'll leave some comments in between. So hopefully you guys do enjoy today's video.
We've faced great problems in the past. We haven't faced this exact problem. In fact, we haven't really faced anything that even quite resembles this problem. But we've faced tougher problems. And the American miracle, the American magic, has always prevailed, and it will do so again. And I would like to take you through a little history to essentially make my case that if you were to pick one time to be born and one place to be born, and you didn't know what your sex was going to be, you didn't know what your intelligence would be, you didn't know what your special talents or special deficiencies would be, that if you could do that one time, you would not pick 1720, you would not pick 1820, you would not pick 1920. You'd pick today, and you would pick America.
Buffett is by far my favourite investor of all time, and I think the greatest investor of all time. If you look at his performance over such a long period, he outperformed the S&P 500, and he truly does have an absolute plethora of knowledge, which he shares with everyone. You can find dozens of interviews and shareholder meetings all on YouTube. And I advise every investor to look at them. They really are priceless, the information that he provides. And as you can see, he says if you could pick one country to be born in for opportunity and for business success, you'd pick USA. And he's very clear on that, and has been for decades. And it shows his belief in the future of the US economy and US corporate success. So that's definitely something to bear in mind.
This is an extraordinarily young country. Now, I'm comparing it to a couple of guys that are pretty old, but when you think about the fact that my age, Charlie's age, or our life experience, and then we'll throw in this young guy over here, Greg Abel, and if our life experiences combined exceed the life of the United States, we are a very, very young country. But what we've accomplished is miraculous. Now just think of this little spot in history. And if we'll go to slide 2, I've tried to estimate. Well, let's go back and we stay with slide 2. But the population in 1790, we had 3.9 million people here. Incidentally, when you look up census figures, you find out that they had a big fire in the Department of Commerce building in 1921, so they lost a lot of the census records. So these are not quite as there's some things where there's a few gaps, but there were 3.9 million people in the United States. And actually, I've got 0.6 million. It's closer to 0.7 million. There were 700,000 of those people were slaves at the time. But those 3.9 million people were 1/2 of 1% of the population of the planet. And if you'd asked any of those 3.9 million people, any of them, to imagine what life would be like 231 years later, even the most optimistic person, and they could have been drinking heavily and even had a little pot, and they still could not in their wildest dreams have thought that in 3 lifetimes, Charlie's, mine, and Greg's, that in that period, you would be looking at a country with 280 million vehicles shuffling around its roads, airplanes Maybe not today so much, but they'll be back again. And they were flying people at 40,000 feet, coast to coast in 5 hours. That great universities would exist in one state after another, great hospital systems, and entertainment would be delivered to people in a way nobody could have dreamt of in 1790s. This country, in 231 years, has exceeded anybody's dreams.
It's important to know how young America truly is, but as you can see in Buffett's short life, he's absolutely outperformed the S&P 500 with a tremendous climb at the start. It really is a significant difference in performance between the overall market's average and Warren Buffett's performance. Obviously the S&P, the 500 biggest companies in the United States, Buffett actually recommends that the average investor should just invest in an index fund such as the S&P 500. But as you can see, the long-term performance of America really is unparalleled when you compare it to any other economy on the planet, and it looks like it's only going to keep moving forward.
If you'll move to the next slide, I tried to find out what was the wealth of the country in 1789, our starting point. And I punched in United States wealth. I tried 1789, I tried 1790. I thought it might be a little easier in terms of a round year. And I think 4 million or so references came up. And I didn't look at all 4 million. But I can tell you, the data collection in those early days on many fronts was not anything like today. You really can't find what I would consider reliable figures. You can find out how many mules there were in the country and a few things like that, and trying to add them up. But in real estate, when you're looking at houses or apartment houses or office buildings, that they're each slightly different than each other, but they look to comparable sales. Let's move on to the next slide, to the wealth of the country since then. And here we have some figures that come out pretty regularly. Well, they do come out regularly, where the Federal Reserve estimates the net household worth of people in the United States, all the households in the United States. And you can look these up, and you'll see that there's 30 trillion of stocks, and I think maybe single-family homes. There's 82 million or so owner-occupied single families, and maybe 45 million rental apartments and so on. So you start adding all these up, and the Federal Reserve tells us, and I invite you to look at the data, it's kind of interesting, that we now, in the United States, 231 years later, we have 100 trillion, we have more than 100 trillion of household wealth, even though the stock market's gone down somewhat since the last quarterly report. So you say, well, we've had a lot of inflation and everything. We actually, in the United States, for the first half of our existence, roughly, we didn't really have that much inflation. We had inflationary periods and deflationary periods, but the general price level did not change that dramatically. But I will assume again for this calculation that there's been 20-for-1 inflation. It's way less than that in many commodities, but it's very hard to measure and talk about equivalent benefits from different kinds of products and so on, and costs. But I think it's reasonable to say that the United States, in real terms, has increased in wealth. That's something in the area of 5,000 for one.
1789, you had $1 billion worth of household wealth. If you ask someone in the year 1800 what they thought the GDP of the United States would be in 2020 and the total household wealth, you would not expect them to say over 100 trillion for wealth and over 20 trillion for annual GDP. It's just beyond anyone's dreams, the success of America and the success of Western world in terms of financial success. And as you can see, the Buffett indicator, so it's the US market cap, so market cap of all companies on the stock market divided by the GDP for the year, and it's significantly overvalued, or it was at its highest point on this graph just before the virus, as you can see, and it's plummeted since, but it's recovered, and it's actually in the significantly overvalued zone according to Buffett's own metrics, over 115% in terms of the ratio. He was saying was significantly overvalued, but it's actually at about 139%. That's the market is about 139% of total GDP for the last year, which is not a good sign. This rebound was a bit erratic, and it really didn't make any sense. It was against logic, but the Federal Reserve have committed themselves. They're going to back this market, which I think could end badly. So be very cautious, or I'm going to be very cautious anyway, and we're going to see how this market goes in the next 6, 9, 12 months. So yeah, make sure to leave a comment if you enjoyed today's video. Thank you all for tuning in again, and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next video.